Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to Halo Infinite. Infinite has been out for about a week now, and it is a lot of fun. If you haven't downloaded it yet, for whatever reason, it's free and only about 20 gig, so you have no excuse. Anyway, Halo Infinite's maps are amazing, so I thought I'd rank all the maps in the game, and this list is correct as of launch. So if you're watching this in 2023, don't start commenting that I forgot the Lockout remake, the Valhalla remake, or the Ivory Tower remake that they are almost certainly going to give us. So without further ado, let's get into this. In 10th place we have Launch Site, which is an intermediate map, which is to say it's large and it has vehicles, but it's still only a 4v4 map instead of a big team battle map. Launch Site is visually reminiscent of Countdown from Halo Reach, however in terms of gameplay we weren't so lucky. Launch Site is simply too boring and too large. It has no flow whatsoever, which is bad enough in objective modes but worse still in Slayer. In terms of vehicles, you'll get a Warthog and a Ghost, but that's about it, and they're both fairly redundant because, as someone on foot, you have no reason to go anywhere near the road that runs through the centre of the map, and that's about the only place you can realistically get a vehicle. The map isn't all bad though. Visually it's rather spectacular, especially when fighting under the Sabre, and it's one of the only examples of human architecture in a Halo game being genuinely exciting. This map wouldn't be bad in a 6v6 mode, but it's just too large for a 4v4 map, and it's just a bit too small for a BTB map as well. Talking of BTB, our next map is Deadlock. I would like to preface that I don't think Deadlock is a bad map. The only map I truly think is bad is Launch Site, and every other map is pretty good, but unfortunately, Deadlock has to fall into second last place in my ranking. The vehicle combat is excellent, with a lot of different routes to take across the map, and additionally, like almost every level in the game, the visual elements are stunning. Fighting at night under the massive banished cannon in the middle of the map is truly something special, and I think Halo Infinite as a whole is really very good at making every map visually spectacular, and making combat cinematic goes a long way to making a game fun, as any Battlefield player would know. However, Deadlock is very open and doesn't flow very well because of it. Additionally, places where players will frequently meet, such as either one of the bases, the cave, or the crash site on the edge of the map, are quite boring to fight in. And speaking of boring, whilst fighting under the banished cannon in the middle of the map is cinematic, it's only cinematic because of the grandiose of the cannon itself, rather than the dead boring fighting that actually goes on in the barren waste beneath it. It would have been cool if there was a little bit of interior fighting inside the cannon, because currently that whole structure seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. Up next we have Bazaar, which is by no means a bad map. Bazaar is visually very nice, with a unique visual style that's not yet been seen in Halo. The verticality is excellently varied, with tons of platforms to jump around on and shoot down from. Additionally, the complex network of streets and buildings around the edge of the map is very interesting to fight in, and the placement of the weapons and equipment on this map is also very good. However, what drags Bazaar down is the middle of the map, where all the combat actually happens. The centre of the map is relatively boring and the sightlines are far too long. The likelihood of actually killing someone across the centre square with an assault rifle or a sidekick is incredibly low, due to the fact that neither of those weapons perform well at range, which gives whoever you're attacking a solid 15 seconds to process the situation and seek cover. This means it's all too easy to be locked into a cover battle when exchanging fire with a member of the opposing team on the other side, unless they have a battle rifle or a commando, in which case the middle square is just a no-go, as it happens to be in the perfect battle rifle range band. In 7th place we have Aquarius, which is another visually impressive map, with the crisp white walls complemented by the bright green plant life. In terms of gameplay, the map is similar to Bazaar. The parts around the outside are interesting and varied, although slightly less so on Bazaar, but to make up for this, the middle section of the map, while still a killing field, is substantially less dangerous than Bazaar's square, simply because the Aquarius centre areas are perfect in assault rifle range. One thing that does help is that the centre area of Aquarius is divided by a large bridge that crosses from left to right, upon which the overshield spawns. This bridge can only be crossed under through an exceptionally narrow corridor, which effectively acts as the choke point of the map. The one problem is, however, why risk dying to get through the tunnel when you could just go around the edge? In 6th place we have Recharge, which, being an asymmetrical map, has a very different flow to the previous two maps we've talked about. Whilst Bazaar and Aquarius have you heading directly into the enemy team, Recharge sees you flanking around using the outer edge of the map. It does have a central area, which, like Bazaar and Aquarius, is a killing field, but unlike Aquarius and Bazaar, it is not an issue here as you are funneled around the outsides of the map, whereas in the other two maps, especially so with Bazaar, you are funneled directly into the central area. It is also worth saying that whilst still much more visually interesting than a Call of Duty map, Recharge is one of the more lackluster maps when it comes to visual presentation, because the entire thing is just grey. Next up we have Streets, which is an example of how to make a 3-lane map where the middle isn't known colloquially as the danger zone. The streets of Streets are very narrow, with plenty of cover to help you on your way. In addition, there are a substantial number of alleyways linking the streets and a lot of low walls, which, thanks to Halo Infinite's mantling system, can be used as excellent flanking routes to get up behind whole groups of enemies. Visually, Streets is incredibly impressive, with tons of bright lights and billboards flashing images into the night sky. There are also a ton of Easter eggs and references in these billboards and signs, so do keep a lookout. Another thing I liked about Streets is that it creates an impressive amount of verticality without feeling forced or unrealistic. Whether it's the curving slope up the side of the map, or the 2-story building that acts as one of the team's bases, there is an impressive amount of variation in this map, which really helps it to get in as good a position as it has got in this ranking. now we get to High Power, which is one of the 3 big team battle maps that the game launched with. High Power is set on one of Zeta Halo's many forests, and unlike Deadlock, which features Banished architecture, and Fragmentation, which features Forerunner architecture, High Power features only human architecture, which leads to a very militaristic feel. Visually, the map is beautiful, with the rich forests and small ravine next to the blue base really adding a lot of character. Perhaps even more stunning is the waterfall behind the blue base, and the passage along the side of the map, with the pipes and lava illuminating the rocky walls in an eerie glow. Gameplay wise, High Power is much more streamlined than Deadlock, with most of the fighting happening in and around the massive door structure in the middle of the map. Unlike the other 2 big team battle maps, flying vehicles in the form of wasps spawn at both bases, which guarantees exciting aerial combat. My one complaint about High Power, however, is that none of the lanes offer a particularly exciting experience, and whilst the natural features of the map and the door in the middle are very exciting, both bases leave a lot to be desired visually. In third place we have Fragmentation, which is another big team battle map, this time focusing on a mysterious Forerunner installation deep in the forests of Installation 07. This is the most beautiful of any of the maps in Halo Infinite, with rich grassy forests contrasted by sharp Forerunner architecture, with a massive structure at each end of the map, similar to the ones found on Installation 04, and several smaller corridors, rooms and passageways dotted around the rest of the map. The near iconic ring structures make an appearance here, which adds to the magnificence of the map, although they could have maybe added a few more, as only having one seems a bit cheap. In terms of flow, this is by far the best of the big team battle maps, with wide open spaces around both bases, all being forced into a choke point in the middle of the map. This map design helps keep such a big map flowing so well, and really adds to the excellent combat loop. I think, if they were going to work on any map, this is where Scorpions and Wraiths would have been most at home. Currently they aren't in any multiplayer map, which I assume is because they aren't ready yet, but I'm hoping they'll be added to this map and maybe High Power, although not Deadlock because it's too open, as time goes on. In second place we have Live Fire. Firing range maps tend to be pretty good in video games, mainly because the designers can create whatever they want in terms of shapes and lanes and structures, and nobody will bat an eyelid because it's a firing range and is designed to be a simulation. Additionally, this means it is possible to mix map styles as well, with seamless transitions between long and short range engagements because, well, it's a firing range. This creates an excellent flow on firing range, which mixes open fields with watchtowers, buildings, close quarters corridor combat and also choke point combat all into one map, without feeling overwrought or exhausted. Unlike every other map in this game, every single location on Live Fire is interesting, dynamic and fun to fight in. Whether it's holding out in the main room against the onslaught of enemies, guarding the power weapon spawn from the watchtower, or fighting over the oddball in the corridor at the beginning of the match, there is never a dull fight in Live Fire. My one complaint about this map, which stops it getting top place, is that being a firing range, visually it is quite boring. It doesn't really feel like too much effort went into getting this map to be as visually interesting as it could be, which I think is a real shame. And in first place, as the best map in Halo Infinite, we have Behemoth. It was very, very difficult choosing between this and Livefire as the best map in the game, and ultimately I decided that Behemoth was the right choice for first place. Visually, the map is one of the best in the game, with soaring Forerunner structures sticking out like a sore thumb in the vastness of the desert, until you look off the edge of the map and realise that there's another structure just like this one a few miles out, and then another one after that, and then another one. This sort of spectacle is what makes me love Forerunner architecture so much. Whether it's exploring the vastness of the library, fighting for the mysterious beacons in the second mission of Halo CE, or by looking out from Behemoth and seeing dozens of identical structures stretching out into the infinite desert, Forerunner engineering has always been vast, and that's why it's the most visually exciting of any of the race's architecture in the series. Behemoth looks like it's not been touched in centuries, with sand washing liberally into the rooms and onto the platforms of the enormous monument, and yet, like all Forerunner technology, it continues to function without flaw, as I'm sure it will be doing in thousands of years. Gameplay wise, Behemoth is an intermediate map with two identical bases on either side, and vehicles and gravity cannons being placed liberally as a means of getting around. It's not actually that much smaller than Launch Site, which I said was too big, yet it manages to be so much more enjoyable by virtue of decent design, funneling all players to either a vehicle, a power weapon, or the enemy base. With the placement of both vehicles and power weapons on this map is just about as good as it gets, with everything being placed along the centre line of the map, which causes a great amount of fighting, all of which is in interesting locations. In terms of vehicles, on one side you'll get some sort of Warthog, and then on the other side you'll get a Banshee, Chopper or Ghost, which leads to just the right amount of vehicle fighting on an infantry focused map. The ability to use the entire sandbox on such a well designed map is what nabs Behemoth the top spot. No matter what you're doing, whether it's racing around in a Warthog, fighting in the corridors, or running the enemy flag back to your base, Behemoth will make it fun. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I'm definitely going to be making more Halo Infinite content in the future, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you later. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Remember to like, subscribe and comment. It costs you nothing and it's a great way to help out the channel. Stay safe and goodbye.